The Grenada AIDS Foundation was a charitable organization set up by Danny Williams and people like Dr. McBurnett and other doctors, Dr. Spencer, and so forth. And maybe I should contextualize here because those of us who remembered the break of the news with regards to HIV and AIDS in the early 1980s, and how it started to spread, especially in the sub-Saharan region in Africa, and then started to move in the direction of the Caribbean and so forth. There was a real need for communities and countries to actually take stock and to somehow try and deal with the spread of the disease. And so the Grenada AIDS Foundation was one of the very first national response to dealing with HIV and AIDS here in Grenada. It started in 1995. And just around that time, Danny Williams got into politics and somehow had to resign the position, and Dr. McBurnett took over the organization. It was a number of professional people in this organization, counselors, doctors, people who were in the health services and so forth, people who were also attached to the prisons. Are you not hearing me? Oh, okay, all right. I thought the mic by now would have been carrying my voice. All right, sorry for that though. I was just more or less trying to explain the people who made up the Grenada AIDS Foundation to sort of give you an idea as to exactly what the organization, who made up the organization and the work that they did. I mentioned before it started in 1995 with Danny Williams as the very first chairperson of the organization, and then went into politics. And so Dr. McBurnett took over the reins of the organization. You had people like Dr. Spencer also, who was attached to the St. George's University. You had people attached to the prisons, people attached to the social services. You had people like Peter Drago, who was a Peace Corps worker here in Grenada and so forth. So those are the wide range of cross-section of people. And also people who were affected at that time with HIV and AIDS. And mind you, though most of us were part of the organization, we never knew the status of those people after a number of years. So that is exactly, the people comprising the Grenada AIDS Foundation then. And I must say also, and again, I'm more or less, I think we need to put things in context, because there was a very vibrant, national education program that was run by the Ministry of Health at the time. And I don't think we should take away any credit from people like Miss Judith Benoit, who was, Judy Benoit, who was somehow spearheading that. And, Grenada had a very, very good public education program in the very early stages, of the pandemic. As this developed, we would, understand the dynamics of the disease itself and what you had to deal with, because the fact here is that most of the people who were affected with HIV and AIDS in the very early period, those were people who were very much guarded, and they themselves went through a very traumatic experience, and they never wanted to be in the public space and so forth. And I think most of us here might be aware of the type of stigma and discrimination that some of these people were associated with. So in a way, all of that showed how complex the work in dealing with HIV and AIDS was. Now, the Grenada AIDS Foundation was made up of four subcommittees. There was an education and counseling committee. There was a home care committee. There was a fundraising committee and a media committee. Right? Four subcommittees, basically, made up the Grenada AIDS Foundation. Those subcommittees would have worked and meet as the situation demanded. You know, they were very much active and on the ground. And the executive committee met once a month for reporting, right? One of the very early problems was that of accessing medication, medicine for the people affected with HIV and AIDS. And because of the link with the St. George's University, I think Dr. Mark Barnett and most of the other people involved were able to access, you know, those medication and the regular checks that these people would have had to do to look at their blood count and so forth. Those technical areas that the people in the Ministry of Health, you know, are usually, you know, inclined to deal with. But maybe here in this, for the interests of the people who are in this seminar, maybe I can focus on to a great extent, on the media committee, of which I was part. I was part of the media committee, and I joined the AIDS Foundation maybe somewhere around the 1990, maybe 1997, maybe a few years after it was founded. Really, I was not a founding member. And so I became part of the media committee at that time, working with some other people like Nigel Martlin, who again, Peter Drago himself, Osbert, Reverend Osbert, who was here yesterday, and so forth. But the media committee was tasked with the whole idea of trying to advocate and reach out to the community, and especially as far as it relates to advocacy with regards to stigmatization and discrimination. Because up to today, that is an issue with regards to people with HIV and AIDS, right? So we are tasked with that. And so we came up with a number of ideas as to exactly how we would have engaged the community. We had a mobile booth that we would move with from place to place, whether it was sporting activities, cultural activities, you know, and so forth. Move with the whole idea of distributing condoms and distributing pamphlets, educational pamphlets on HIV and AIDS, and trying to engage people and discuss with them, you know, the nature of the disease itself, you know, that, and so forth. We also raised, we raised funds, and we were involved in a number of activities like rum runner cruises, you know, walkathon, name it, you know, that type of thing, because resources were scarce. Not like now with this PEPFAR project where, as Ms. Pascal mentioned, there is some $92,000 US available to support organizations who want to undertake that type of work. Now, the media community at one time, well, one of our major projects as far as it relates to publicizing the issues of AIDS was a production that we endorsed. I would say we gave an endorsement to Uriah Peters' production, which was referred to as, which was called Masquerade of the Mind. I have for those of you who want to know more about it, I have a pamphlet here which shows it. But this production, in a nutshell, was about this young man who was a medical student and so forth, and was very much aloof to the regular people in the society, and never thought that he could have been contaminated with the AIDS virus and so forth. And he saw it as a what you might say, an underprivileged poor people disease, you know. But finally, he ended up, you know, contracting the disease. And that's the basic theme on the production itself, Masquerade of the Mind. I don't know how many of us here may have, you know, seen that production by Uriah Peters in 2001 it was, if I'm correct. Yeah, 2001. So that was an endorsement, and the idea was that we would have used this production to raise funds for the Grenada AIDS Foundation. We were really scrunting. Most of the people were professional people, giving off their spare time to work with the organization, and we only had funds that were, raised through fundraising. We were not in any way as fortunate to receive large donations and that type of thing. Right? So we used this production as a means of raising funds, and the idea is that 50% of the proceeds would have gone to the Grenada AIDS Foundation. We can talk more in detail about that, really. So that was one activity, this production, Masquerade of the Mind, and so forth. But the Grenada AIDS Foundation were involved also in a lot of, workshops, conferences, international, regional, local, and as it developed, I can remember very well, we had people like Rachel, what's her name? Rachel, who is now I think the lady who's spearheading Hopals. If those of you who work in the HIV and AIDS area would know Rachel. I don't remember her surname. There was also Michelle. She's gone, she's passed on to the great beyond. Rachel, Michelle, all of those ladies who are very, very active and attending regional and international conferences, on behalf of the Grenada AIDS Foundation and so forth. But what happened is that most of these people who got their grounding with the Grenada AIDS Foundation saw an opportunity to step out and more or less set up their own outfit, their own organization. Because Hopals, which again, there are quite a few of them who moved out. Nigel, Matlin, who is also, I think, very much active again, they all got their grounding with the Grenada AIDS Foundation and that type of thing. And we, one of the area of difficulties, one of the area of great difficulty for the organization was that of dealing with the people who were stigmatized and discriminated against, and had to be, because it is for those of us who maybe I cannot empathize, because a life-threatening to be inflicted a life-threatening illness is not an easy thing to deal with, something like AIDS. And I think personally, that is one of the things when I started with the AIDS Foundation and understanding how the virus affected people's life. That's one of the things that forced me to somehow try to get more knowledge as to exactly what this disease is all about and so forth. And I'm making a point here in the sense then that we worked with people in the Grenada AIDS Foundation who were affected, and then there were other people in the society who were affected, and basically there was no way for them there was nobody for them to turn to for help as such. It was a difficult situation. The place where they lived, the people did not have any, how I should put it, they didn't have the ability to somehow entertain them, to deal with them. They more or less saw them as a threat, They themselves were going through that trauma, their job, some of them may have left their job and so forth. Medication was difficult to find, and so could you imagine someone in that situation? So the Grenada AIDS Foundation now had this home care committee who would go out and meet these people like Dr. Spencer, there was another counselor, there was Vicky Oberts, trying to remember some of those names, but I don't remember most of them there. But we had a number of counselors and people responsible for this home care visit, including Reverend James. And we'll go out, on a daily basis, make appointment, meet these people, sort of look at their needs, physical and other words. Some of them, housing was a problem, some medication was a problem, food is a problem. I remember we had to sometimes try to get, little food packages together and deliver for them on a daily basis and that type. So in terms of the capacity of the AIDS Foundation to deal with that, that was a serious problem, right? And things gravitated from there. And then, as I said before, people within the foundation saw the need now to set up their own outfit and to somehow deal with this very real problem, these real practical problems that the people affected with HIV and AIDS, were faced with. And again, would you imagine that twinned with gender-based violence and all of the sort where, you would have, because it's a real, again, as I said, these situation and people who are faced with the disease in itself sometimes find themselves in some very complex and difficult, relationships. So gender-based violence twinned with HIV and AIDS and everything else and that type of thing. So, but the Grenada, we at the Grenada AIDS Foundation at the time, we really tried and did what we can do best, and with the help of other people, the help of the Ministry of Health. There were quite a number of people, and the attachment, the linkages that we had with the social services, the Ministry of Health, St. George's University, people in the region, Peter Weller and all of these people in places like Jamaica and some in Suriname. I remember some of them. And I remember well also, we actually hosted at the Koyaba, I'm trying to remember what year it was. We acted a sex workers workshop at the Koyaba, trying to remember. But that was hosted here in Grenada by the Grenada AIDS Foundation sometime in the early 2000s. Whether 2003, 2002. Oh yes, I'm getting the indicator here that time is running out on my, time. But this initiative to somehow bring, assistance and help to people affected with HIV and AIDS and gender-based violence is a real, issue. A national issue. It requires a national response, and I think I would want to say, give GINO as an organization, some sort of, commendation for undertaking this type of responsibility. All right. I don't want to be too long. I think I have to make way for. Oh, well, okay, if I'm going to, it's good to see people here who I think some of them that I know, hardworking people in community organization. And I was saying yesterday when I listened to some of the statistics, because I thought that there was some sort of cap on the disease here in Grenada, the spread of the disease. But when I hear the figures, compared to the time that we were at the Grenada AIDS Foundation, it's alarming. At least I have children who live in the society, I have family, I have relatives who I love. Who knows? They somehow are exposed to this, the threat of the scourge of HIV and AIDS, and somehow it's a basic responsibility on each one of us to somehow respond, take up the, somehow, respond positively and make a contribution in stemming the tide of HIV, AIDS, and gender-based violence. All right, thank you so very much for listening.